Hello and welcome to the Be Glad movement. My name's Pollyanna and I'm on a mission to bring you as many stories as possible of good coming out of bad and reasons to be glad. And today I'm joined by Sharon. Say hello, Sharon.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us. I say this at the end of at the beginning of every video. I'm going to do what I always do and just let you dive straight in and tell your story. So over to you.
Okay, so my story. Where do I start? I'm a military wife. My husband and I have been together for over 20 years. I'm a Royal Marines wife, and in 2011 I was really lucky, and I took part in the choir Military Rise with Gareth Malones. So Gareth and a TV company came and spent, I think they were with us from the February and right until the end of the October, November, and recorded with us. We rehearsed and recorded 3 times a week. And it was a big part of our life. During that time, my husband was deployed to Afghanistan. So he went for nearly 7 months. It was the longest tour. He'd been away a lot, but that was the longest tour. And I had 2 children at the time, my son and my daughter as well. My daughter's little. She's a baby. She's only a year old.
Right. Okay.
So my son was just started school as well. And so I was from where we're based. So actually, I didn't know very many military wives. I could probably count on one hand the amount of military wives I knew. Because I'd worked, although I'd had children, I tended to go to socialise with the people that I worked with.
Right.
And I worked a lot. I was working in an advertising agency, so I worked long days. And so I could never go to the coffee mornings. Anything that was socially organised for women where I lived, I couldn't do because I worked, and I worked full time. Even with 2 children, I was working full time. So when the choir came along and my mum said they were at the Families Day filming everybody, because before you go, that you have that pre-deployment Families Day and there's lots of briefings and things. And he was there, and my mum shoved me in front of the camera and said, you need to do that, Sharon. You need to do that. And I was like, okay, then I need to do that.
Great, aren't they, for that kind of stuff?
Yeah. But she went. She left me in front of the camera. And so I did. So I saw there were all these posters around, and I turned up to the first rehearsal. In fact, they were rehearsing in the day as well, and I couldn't really get to the day rehearsals because I worked, so I only went once a week on a Tuesday night. And I rocked up on this Tuesday night. Everybody else had been there in the day for their first rehearsal, and they'd been put in their sections. And the alto section was a bit light on numbers. So Gareth just said, go in the altos. You'll be fine, along with a couple of other ladies. So that's where we stayed. And I had the best time in that short period of time that he was with us. And actually, I joined not only because of my mum, but I wanted my children to know other children. So when your husband's deployed, they run these family days, like deployment briefings once a month. It's normally a lunch. There's a briefing in the morning and there's a lunch. And I'd done them in the past, and I didn't know anybody. So we'd stay for the children's entertainment with my son, and I really would invariably not know many people. And I just said, I don't want that for me or for my children, on this other deployment. So that's what I did. So I turned up, and that's why I went to choir, and I just met the most amazing bunch of women, and we had the most amazing time. And they said to us, don't ask too many questions. I can remember Stephen, the producer, saying, don't ask too many, or director I think he was, don't ask too many questions, just enjoy it and go with it. So if you've seen any of the programs before, that's fine, but and we didn't. So invariably the only questions we'd ask were, what do we have to wear, and do we have to take food? That was it. That's all we want to know. Are we getting fed, and what do we have to wear? And it's still now and we had the most wonderful highs and lows, and actually it gave me something to talk about when my husband rang me. So often, I mean, I would quite often keep a notepad and I would write things down so that when he did ring me, it wasn't just you're trying to make small talk because you're not seeing, and we were writing letters as well, so lots of things were covered in letters, but it gave me something to talk about. And I know he was thinking to himself, even now, what, you're singing in a choir? Are you sure? That's kind of what old ladies do. Are you sure? but he said he could hear in my voice just how uplifted I was and how happy I was. So we spent all of this time, had some great experiences, got to the Festival of Remembrance. I mean, what a way to end this thing. It was just incredible. I can remember standing there with Her Majesty the Queen and singing the national anthem, thinking, I'm singing the national anthem to the Queen, and she's there. It was just incredible. And we all said goodbye. You know, that we went back. We were actually getting ready in the Royal Geographical Society building next door to the Royal Albert Hall, and we all said, Paul Miller came in and all our husbands came in because they'd been watching, and we all said goodbye, and that was it. So it was this massive high, and then that was it. We were like, we didn't think we'd see Gareth again. We were going to go and keep our own choir going at Chivenor. The Plymouth girls were going to do the same. Gareth was going to give us a music pack and help us find an MD, and that was it. And then a week later, not even a week later, we had a phone call to say, would you like to come and record wherever you are? We went, oh, yes, of course. So we went to London and recorded at Air Studios, and it was, just amazing. And then everything else is history. But, you know, we had #1 single, which was fabulous. But actually, at the back of our minds was always that actually there are other ladies like us who could do with and would really benefit from this experience.
Yeah.
And so we always wanted to create this legacy. In fact, we'd always talked about creating a network of choirs when we were going through the recording process. But when you were told not to ask too many questions and not talk too much, we knew that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to take it to other ladies like us. So we went and recorded and everything. And then we found out, we were told about a choir at Catterick, the Catterick Wags. And they'd actually formed before we had, but none of us had known that they existed. And two ladies, Caroline Jopp and Nikki Clark, had set that choir up whilst the Scots Guards Regiment was deployed up there in Catterick. And actually Nikki had written to Gareth and asked for his help up there, and that's where the idea had come from.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's where the idea had come from for the choirs. So of course they were in conversation with everybody as well. So we had in the January 2012 a meeting with the record company, with I'm just trying to think who else, the TV company. There was ladies from Chivenor and Plymouth, representatives Nikki and Caroline, and representatives from SAFA and the Royal British Legion. We all got together and said there needs to be a legacy of this success, because actually for the first time we had this cross-service, cross-rank support service for women that we've just never had. And it was amazing. I mean, there is no other word for it. It was amazing. And actually, ladies were empowered because of what they'd seen on the television to set up choirs themselves. So they were calling us already and finding out through social media channels that the ladies at Chivenor had set up and were running. Who do I talk to? I want to set up a choir. So they were already starting to set them up. And so at this first meeting, we decided there was an offer of an album on the table. Wow. That was really, it's super exciting, but at the same time really unbelievable. And so with everybody sat around the table, decided that there had to be, the legacy would be a creation of a charity that would support women in the military community to set up choirs and to run choirs. And so that's what we did. So there was this meeting, came away from the meeting. We also agreed in that meeting that any monies raised from this album should, with the full support of SAFA and the Royal British Legion, should go towards this new charity that we were setting up. And at that time, both charities were really heavily involved, because there's beneficiaries of the proceeds from wherever you are, and SAFA offered us some desk space in their offices in London whilst we were setting up. So there was an allegiance formed there.
Cool.
And then a couple of months later, we met again with some ladies from the very first choirs that had set up. So that first album only had, I think it was 12 choirs from memory. It seems like that's such a long time ago now. Or it might have been less actually, but it was the very, very first choirs that set up. So Chivenor, Plymouth, Catterick, Portsmouth and Lynston, I believe. I can't remember. So right. I might be wrong. Sorry. And they formed the album, and then ladies from those choirs, Lympstone as well, they all met in March 2012 at Wellington Barracks, and we had like a brainstorming workshop about what it would look like and who was going to take responsibility, who was going to do roles, what it would look like. And out of that there came this group of women, military wives. So there was Caroline and Nikki, there was Ness, Emma, myself, Kelly, Sarah and Carol, and we all worked together to create what is now the Military Wives Choirs Foundation.
Wow.
So set that up. None of us had ever created a charity before. We did have the support of Safa helping us as well.
Yeah.
And went through the whole creating a big grown-up charity, all the while managing the projects that are happening as well. So the albums, the TV performances and appearances, and trying to make it as fair as possible. You know, we always worked on the ethos that no one lady was more or less important than another.
Right.
Well, we had familiar faces that people would recognise, and we knew we had to retain that. Actually, every military wife was as important as another, and that was what, you know, drove us forward. So actually, when it came to getting so for instance, we had an album and a charity launch in the September of 2012, and I think we had just under 700 women in Wellington Barracks from literally choirs at British military bases all over the world.
Wow.
Coming in, that we coordinated to come into Wellington Barracks to be a part of it and a part of the launch, because it was so important to us that everybody got to go.
Yeah.
And we kept pushing back and saying, these ladies, everyone's important.
Yeah, and I love what you were saying earlier about it being cross services and cross rank. You know, that's a really important factor, the cross rank side of things as well. I feel. Yeah,
and we never, you know, I never knew. I'd never question who the ladies in my choir, what job their husband did, what service they're in, what rank. Absolutely no idea.
Yeah.
Honestly, no idea. There are still ladies, I still sing in a choir now, and there are ladies I have no idea, because it's about the women, and it's about time for them, and it's about them and their identity whilst they're there. And I think so often in the military community, you're identified because of your husband. You kind of lose your own identity a bit.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. Really easily done, and it sometimes I think it happens just without you even realising it. It just happens. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I know. I totally agree. I've been there, done that. I won't go into my own story about that. Yeah, it is difficult though, being a military wife, and you have to kind of take on their identity to a degree, in so much as you get this new label. I'm a dependent, you know, and then you feel that's so disempowering. And then you can't help, because they split where the different patches. You can't help but be going in your front door on the officer's patch or the other patch.
Yeah.
And you know, like, oh, I've admitted who I am. Do you know what I mean? But the thing that's so funny is we can't. We're not our husbands. We don't do their job. We are us. And you could just as easily have married anybody else, you know.
Absolutely.
It's such a funny, surreal kind of world to be in sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, we're all individuals, aren't we? And
yeah, exactly.
And you lose that identity. It's very strange. It is very strange how it happens, but it does, and it happens to everybody. And I think the great thing about the choirs was that if somebody wasn't at a choir rehearsal, you would immediately say, where are they? And somebody would message them, or they would go and knock on their front door. And that hadn't happened. You know, a lot of these women, their husbands were deployed, don't forget. So it's very easy to not see anybody. It's very easy to not go out, especially when you've got children. It's very easy that you get up at 7 a.m. and you're with them all day. And then at 7 o'clock at night, you put them to bed and you're trapped. Because they're in bed, and where do you go? You've got no husband around, so that's you. And if you haven't seen anybody all day, it's very, very lonely. And the great thing, it just created this sense of community that had, you know, we're at Chibnall, there's one big patch of misappropriated housing things, but mostly on one big patch. But even so, I mean, I was in the choir with a lady who lived probably 15 doors down from me. Our children are the same age, and I never knew her until I went to the choir. Never even seen. She lived, and you know, we lived on the same street, like 20 doors apart. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. These women that were all in the same community, and actually probably before the choir only a handful of us knew each other, and yet we've got this the bond we all share. Even now, you know, 7 years later, is just huge. They're amazing, and the bond and from the choirs that have set up since, and the experience we've shared with those, there is just this real bond between everybody.
Awesome.
Empowered women.
You're making me think of there's a quote, I'm not going to be able to remember who said it, but it's something along the lines of we don't sing because we're happy because we sing.
Yes.
Yeah, I've heard that one before then.
Yeah, and that's it. And I think that's the thing, that I can't read music. I'd sung in a school choir and I played the clarinet, but you know, with like 20 years ago, longer than that probably. But singing does make you feel good, and it also, you don't need to be able to read music to sing in a choir. You just and the choirs, we tend to learn by ear. We have a musical director, so actually you're learning a new skill as well as learning. You're feeling good because you're singing, it gets your endorphins going, but also you are learning a new skill, and that makes you feel good, and that makes you feel empowered, and it makes you feel confident because you're learning something new that might have been, to begin with, a little bit daunting. And a little bit daunting as well to just go into a room, you know, for a big room full of women. For another woman who's never been before, I always think is a massive step to take, to go into that room when we're in an environment where so often we're judged by what we're wearing, by the job our husband does, by how many children we have, by the type of dog we have, you know, the car we drive. And that's not just in the military, and that's community in general, I think. You're judged how you look. And to then just see all that melt away, and actually you just have this common thread, and it's a great leveler. You just are all the same, learning the same music to make a lovely sound. It's amazing.
It is amazing. I'll just tell you, because I'm very privileged. I feel very privileged to have been part of the choir up at Leeming and then down at Salisbury. And it was because I was at the choir at Leeming, which was only a little choir at the time. A friend who lived a couple of doors down, she had a friend who was in Salisbury. So once she knew that we were moving to Salisbury, she told her friend. And so I have to mention the wonderful Liz Booth, because bless her heart, she drove right out of her way to come and pick me up for that first. I hadn't realised that she was, you know, was right out of her way, to come and bring me to that first choir session at Salisbury. And Salisbury playing military choir is a big choir, so having a tiny Leeming one to suddenly being in this big choir was fantastic. And then Liz was like, "Oh, I'll drive you around and show you Stonehenge and all this kind of stuff." And I was like, "You've come right out of your way to pick me up." So yeah, and that kind of experience when people, you know, people are able to look after you, and it's the love in the room, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's the people like you. They're ladies like you. I think that's it. And I think so. Every one of us has been, like Liz will have been that new lady to a new patch, thinking I don't know anybody, and it just. I think it really helps you empathise as well, and you know, because you know what it's like. You've been there, and there's nothing better. And that for the wives, by the wives is absolutely crucial to that, because it is that you get me, you understand what I'm going through. I'll come and pick you up because I know it's going to be really hard to get you in, you know, for you to get in and make that first step through the door, even if you've sung in a choir before, because it's a big step, isn't it? It takes a huge amount of confidence to go, okay, today's the day, I'm going.
Yeah, exactly. And trying to remember everyone's names.
Yes. I'm thinking, oh God, who are you? I can't remember. Oh, that's so lovely.
So you helped set up the choir, but
Yes.
that's something that you aren't doing anymore.
No, so I'm still part of the choirs. So I'm not a part of the Militarised Choirs Foundation. I'm still singing a choir at Chivner. That a couple of years ago now, the group of wives who set the charity up no longer involved. There's a trustee board now that run the choirs, and they have staff in the office. I think there are some military wives that are staff now as well, but that's very much run by a board of trustees, and there are military wives on there as well. But what I found within the military wives choirs is that there is still a gap for support for women in the military community, purely from it is support and well-being, really. And actually not everybody wants to sing in a choir. Whilst we can talk about how wonderful they are and how fabulous and that they make you feel good, actually singing's not for everybody.
Sure.
And I completely identify that. So, but also I think I know from being a part of the choir the issues that you can face as a military wife. I think I'd always known from the chat that goes on around the patch about the issues that are being faced, and also the handful of people that I did know would know about somebody who was experiencing issues. But being a part of the choirs network, actually that small group of us that set the charity up became a first point of call for support, not necessarily just for setting up choirs, but for other support, for other issues as they were raised. So rather than going to the welfare department, they would come to us and ask us, where can I get help with this? And actually that really resonated with me, because I think, and it comes back to that, it's women like me. I'm going to a woman like me who's going to understand and ask her, because I don't feel embarrassed to be able to ask her. I can phone her I can drop her a message at 9:30 at night and I'll get a message back. We would all message at all times of the day and night, because we knew that those ladies that were running the choirs were doing it, they were doing it voluntarily, but they were also doing it amongst busy family lives, husbands away, trying to fulfill everything. So if the only time they had to message me was at 9:30 at night, that I was going to get back to them. And so out of that, I realised that there is still this need for support. And it comes back to this losing your identity and losing a bit of who you are along the way. So you marry somebody in the military and then you move from base to base, and your confidence, I think, ebbs away a little bit with each move. Or you have children and it's your responsibility for the childcare, because your husband invariably doesn't say he just says I'm going away. You can't ask and say, can I? Whereas actually maybe in an everyday marriage, the guy might come home or the lady might come home and say, I've got to go away for work for a couple of days. How do we figure childcare? That doesn't happen. Certainly not, but me anyway, that you have to sort childcare yourself. And I think with that, you lose a little bit of your identity. And so out of that, I have created Strength Behind the Strong, which is it's a support network that is about empowering military wives. It's about giving them the tools that they need to increase their confidence, to help them have some direction maybe in where they want to go. So it's about taking the best bits of what we learned from the choir, this support, this people like me, and rolling it up into a support service for women in the military community. So I think it is whether it's mindset or whether it's confidence, it's about giving ladies the tools when they need it. And actually it could be that it's online like this, so actually they don't even need to go anywhere. If they feel comfortable going out of the house, or if time is tight, it's about helping them to manage the life that they're living in the best way for them. Because sometimes it is really hard. There is no way getting away from it. Sometimes it is really hard. It's just a set of circumstances, and sometimes you have absolutely no control over those circumstances. You just have to, and that in itself is really hard to deal with. And especially, it's just especially hard if you're used to having, working and having everything under your control. but we walk on such a knife edge, I think, sometimes in this life, of this balancing act of juggling work and family and children and homework and clubs and dogs and everything else that goes with it. And actually the slightest thing can tip that balance either way. And so it's about, strength behind the strong is basically a support network to empower women and to help them and to give them confidence.
I love that. I know it's quite a new idea, isn't it? So it's sort of in its infancy, and I know you're kind of looking for people to follow it, because you've got Instagram and all the
Instagram, and we've got a blog. So I'm really interested to know. I think for me, I can talk anecdotally about the issues that women in the military community are facing. But I think it would be good if anybody has any stories that they want to share, that they'd be happy to share, that we can use on the blog. That's great, because at the moment we're quite often met with, well, there's welfare support there, we don't need it, and I'm going, no, I know there's welfare support there, but it's not the right kind of support, and actually these are the reasons why, and it's very, very good to be able to say these are the reasons why. Sorry, so it's very, that's why. So if any can follow us on social media, send us your story, your experiences of welfare support, where it's worked really well and where it hasn't worked so well, where you think, drop us a message and let us know what kind of support you would like. Because the way I see it, it's very, very much about mindset. It's about confidence building. It's maybe counselling if you needed counselling support, life coaching, but also life skill courses. So things like dealing with conflict or making friends. The things that is so hard. And actually, if you move every 2 years and you have to make new friends every 2 years, it can be really hard, really hard, and really lonely. And actually, if you have a bad experience on one posting, you can close yourself off completely because at your next posting, because of that bad experience. And I think sometimes, that it's just not very nice. It's really sad.
I love the idea of you guys being online, because the whole element of being able to access support and like-minded women all at the same time, rather than, or when it's convenient to you, more to the point, rather than having to wait for the welfare office to open, or
and also feeling a bit daunted. There is a bit of a stigma, I think, that if you go to welfare, what does that mean? Who is the person in welfare that you have to speak to so often? Especially if you live on quite a disparate patch. Who is my welfare officer? Or if your husband's in the Navy on a ship, who do I speak to? It's really hard, isn't it? And I think it's about giving them easy access. It's about easy access to support to the right support when you need it.
And going back to what you were saying earlier about not being sort of integrated with the military community, because you were in the area where you lived anyway, so you just carried on with your own life. There are other women that are carrying on with their life. They don't necessarily move around the country with their husband.
No. So and I think even more so now, where everybody's settling in these big super garrisons that are forming. I think it's even more important. And actually, that brings with it its own issues. I think when you're used to your husband being away and going away, and then they're around more, but actually they're around more, but they're still going away. They're going on shorter deployments. That brings its own issues.
Oh yeah, I know. Because you get yourself into a nice little routine, and so they're back again, and then you're trying to share jobs, but then they're gone again, and you're picking up pieces again, and it's a real sort of roller coaster emotional ride, isn't it? Especially
if it's a long period.
Yeah, especially when you're away from your own friends and family, your own natural support network that you grew up with. You need to sort of integrate with the other ladies, and for those last minute, I've got to go and do this or go and do that, and someone's got to look after the kids or walk the dog. So
or a medical appointment. One of my close friends, her husband was deployed. She was pregnant, due to give birth whilst he was deployed, and she had 2 young boys. So she had to leave when she went into labour. She had to leave her 2 young boys with a neighbour. Luckily, she knew, and another neighbour went with her as a birthing partner.
Wow.
You know, that's the reality of that. You just kind of get on with it. You know, but that had she been in an environment where she didn't know anybody, you know, how do you deal with, where do those 2 children go whilst I go and have
Sure.
another one? It's bonkers. The same lady also moved, her husband also deployed to Afghanistan, and she moved house the week he went. So she moved house, 4 lizards, 2 dogs, 3 children, from one base to another. She's my hero.
I was going to say, bless her heart. That's tough, isn't it? But like you say, you just got to crack on and get on with it. The thing that springs to mind right at this moment is people that say, "Oh, you knew what you were marrying into," and that I know that grates on all of us so much, because until you're actually living it, you don't know what it's going to be like. You wouldn't say that to someone that just had a baby, or you knew what you were into, because it's hard and it's a massive change in your lifestyle. So, but I was just going to mention my friend Alicia. I'm sure she won't mind me mentioning this, because we did actually talk about it in a different video. But she was saying about how hard it was when she'd had a really, really tough day at work as a police officer, and then her husband was over in Afghanistan and he'd had a horrific day, and they actually managed to speak, but Alicia was like, okay, I need to hold it together for him because he's had a horrific day. But equally, she had so much that she'd had a horrific day as well, but she had so much to offload, but couldn't. And so you need your friends and family around you, and the support network of other women that are going to understand what it is you're going through. The disappointment when you miss that call, and it's like, I've been walking down the street, Cheltenham High Street, and then just like cried because I pulled my phone out of my pocket and realised I've missed the call. And you can't ring them back, and it's so frustrating.
Or the phone's ringing as you come in the door, and you just know that it's them, and you miss it, and you don't know when that next phone call's going to be. It's just when you know you only get one phone call, normally one phone call, so they have to queue for the phones and everything. It's just missed it. Then what? And actually, and you do that thing. It's all going back to Alicia and saying that she was holding it together. I think even just if you've had a really bad day and the washing machine's broken, you invariably don't tell them, because it seems really trivial to you to just go, I've got it fixed, it's fine, it's all sorted. And you just don't bother them, because you think what they're doing, you just go, okay, it's about you're there, you're doing this really tough job. And actually, I think you don't allow yourself to think, actually, it can be tough for me too, a different tough, but it can be tough too. And I think it's okay to say, this is tough. This is tough sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. And have the odd down day where you just watch Netflix or whatever and
eat ice cream.
Yeah, definitely. Oh. Sharon, is there anything else you want to tell us about what you're up to? I know you're super busy, but
I think that's it. I think I've covered everything. I mean, it is about, if people have got stories they want to share, get in touch through the Facebook, Instagram, through the blog. It's Strength Behind the Strong and everything. strengthbehindthestrong.co.uk is the website. And just let us know, because actually by sharing those stories and we get the message out there, I think so often we can talk like this and we can talk to friends, but we need to talk about it more openly and share it more widely for people to understand that actually there are these issues there and they can be really easily addressed. And actually they would make things so much nicer.
Okay. Well, that's kind of like what the Be Glad movement is a little bit like, in as much as the Sharon stories. And I say at the end of each video, I really believe that your story and your voice has the ability to help someone in their time of need, because you read it and you go, oh yeah, that's what happened to me, or that's how I'm feeling right now, but she's all right now, and I can get through it too. So brilliant. Well, thanks.
And just women supporting each other. That's it's. I think for so long, it's women, I think they just haven't given themselves permission to support each other. It's much, I don't know what it is, but actually, if you can be kind to each other and support each other, women supporting women, great things happen. Yeah. Women are amazing. We're amazing. You know, we grow other humans and take care of it and all of that. And you think, actually, if we're kind to each other and we support each other, what other amazing things can happen?
Sure. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Sharon, thank you so much for your time this morning. I really, really appreciate it. I'll share all the links to Strength Behind the Strong and also to the Military Wives class. It's still important to send people there as well. But thank you so much. It's been
thank you. Great. Is that all right? I didn't waffle too much.
No, you didn't. Just finish up. If you like this video, please do hit the like and subscribe button, and you'll get notifications when new videos are uploaded. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook if you search @Be Glad Movement. And please do get in touch if you've got a story you'd like to share, even if it's something similar to somebody else's story. Please do still get in touch, because I really do believe your story and your voice has the ability to help someone in their time of need, and I'd love to hear from you. So thank you for joining us, and I'll see you in another episode. Many thanks.